Our final speaker is Óscar Ugarteche. Óscar is an economist, writer, and professor, and senior researcher at the Institute of Economic Research at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, or UNAM. And his work specializes in economics, international finance, economic history, and the world economy. I'm always very impressed by the detail with which, facts and figures with which Óscar supports his arguments. So Óscar, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks for the invitation. And the work I'm going to present is a work that I do with the observatory, with Latin American Economic Observatory we have at the Institute, and we publish weekly notes on the thing, highly detailed weekly notes on the thing. The first thing is, I think, it has been mentioned, but I want to mention it again, the problem of asynchronicity between producers.
Presentation mode, Óscar, please. Presentation mode.
Sorry. There we are. We have a problem of asynchronicity with factories closing down in China and opening up and closing down and opening up. That caused a bottleneck problem. And that caused a transport problem, a container problem. And it ended up hitting end goods, consumer durables. So there you have an impact on prices that cannot be helped. I mean, that's the result of asynchronicity. You'll have to really knock down demand worldwide for those prices to go down. It's not a problem of one country, it's general. That's one thing. The second thing is, China's surplus has grown in spite of everything. It's grown, which on the other side means that the US deficit has increased enormously. And of course, as we all know, an external deficit is financed externally. The US external deficit is financed by central banks, mainly. And it's financed with the instrument of US Treasury bonds. So the US deficit is financed by international, worldwide central banks, which have record levels of international reserves. So when everybody is so terribly worried about the debt problems, I wonder, maybe there are debt problems in places that I have not seen. But generally speaking, in the global south, we have an excess international reserves. And that excess international reserves is a result of excess adjustment over the past however many years. We have almost not grown over the past, 10, 15 years to keep inflation down, it was argued. But what it really did was accumulate international reserves to finance the US external deficit. And now what we're having, and that's very funny, what we're having is imported inflation. Now here you have the freight prices and the way they have gone up. And with a partial opening of the US in May of 2020, the total opening in August of 2020, and the opening of Europe in December of 2020, and all of that pushed freight prices up. And it pushed freight prices up because basically the bottlenecks on the ports were 11 days long. So the cost of freight just went up, just shot up. And that's still being felt. Here you have, this is what a bottleneck looks like. That's Panama. And this was only 3 months ago. If you look at it today, it doesn't look like this anymore. Now, we have food inflation, but nobody speaks about the drought, which is surprising. And there you have the drought. Everything that is marked in brown and yellow is the drought. The drought started in 2019. It's the worst drought in world history. It covers a good part of Asia. It covers North America and South America and a good part of Africa and Europe. So what we're having now is a reduction in supply, of food supply. And you can see it very clearly when Right, well, here you have the drought in South America. The beginning of the drought was in January 2019, and you can see how this goes up, but then prices go further up when the Fed injects liquidity into the markets in 23rd March 2020, and it injected $3 trillion into the market. And that hit commodity prices directly, food prices directly. So you have a combination of that drought plus speculation. Additional elements now, it's everything that has been spoken about the importance of Russia for the provision of certain goods. Just thinking of sunflower seeds and others. But there's one thing that is being hit and has not been mentioned, and that's microchips. Microchips had already been hit before because of this problem of synchronicity. The new reason is that neon gas that is used for the production of microchips is 70% of world neon gas is produced by one firm called Creolin in Odessa. And that firm is shut. So we're going to have a scarcity, or we're already having a scarcity of microchips, which pushes microchip prices up. So you have food prices up, microchip prices up, and then on top of that, you have fuel prices up. Now, those countries that have fuel, that have oil, Mexico has oil, can afford to have subsidized prices and keep prices stable, which they have. Nevertheless, we here in Mexico, we have one of the highest inflation rates in Latin America, in spite of having the fuel prices stable. So what's hitting inflation in Mexico is not fuel, it's food, and food directly related to the drought, because this has been happening for the past 3 years, since 2019, before COVID. And it's just gotten worse. It's just gotten much worse. And of course, then we have all of the monetary explanation. We don't need to go into that. So that's generally speaking, we have a complex of elements that cannot be faced. Here you have what I was talking to Brian a second ago. Here you have interest rates in the US from 1990 on, the downward trend and the upward trend of commodity prices that have just petered out as interest rates start to go up, and they have started to fall down. But this is generally the trend of commodity prices and of interest rates. So we have I don't know if the correlation is very strong or not, but the trend, the inverse trend is clear. And I think the quote is very clever. It's cheap money is like alcohol to an alcoholic for a speculator. So what we're having now is this collapse, the collapse of commodity prices, which is, I find it very amusing. You have, this is copper that is falling, and this is iron ore on the right. The iron ore is 1 year data. Copper is only 1 month, just the last month. But here you have the counterfactual, no? So commodities in general are going up. Some commodities are now going down because of interest rates. And in spite of those interest rates, you have food prices still going up. And that's to do with the supply and the drought. Let's keep the drought in mind. Nobody speaks of the drought. And this is the worst drought in history. So when we have these funny weathers in the north of Canada, or here in Mexico, that's the result of climate change, and climate change is hurting water. There's water scarcity, and that's hurting the production of food. So all of that combined, I think, leads us to inflation, and that's not monetary. So we're going to have this funny situation we had in the 1970s of the South growing like crazy because commodity prices are up, in spite that they're now tapering down, but they're still up. And we're going to have developed countries, rich countries, not growing. And we're going to have inflation everywhere. And monetary inflation might be controlled, but monetary inflation is only a part of inflation. The rest of inflation, until we get back into the just-on-time logic of globalization, which is still there, hasn't gone away, until we go back to that logic and production becomes synchronized again, we're going to have scarcities. And with a microchip scarcities now made even worse with the problem of the neon gas in Odessa, I fear we're going to have a industrial product inflation up in spite of high interest rates. So I don't think we're going to see inflation go down, and I think we're going to see more income concentration, no doubt, yes. That's a clear result. And the way to resolve this is to produce more. That's the only way out. And to have more food security, and to trade more with your closer neighbors, and to strengthen relationship with your neighbors for lines of production that cannot be completed within your own territory, but not sort of extending this trade far away, and perhaps having some types of price controls, no doubt. And somebody spoke about the marketing boards. I remember the marketing boards in the 1970s, and when they were knocked down. But I also remember price controls when we had hyperinflation in Peru, and how they didn't work. How once inflation got beyond whatever it was, 50% a year, price controls didn't work. But maybe price controls work with under 10% inflation. One thing that I am observing, which is interesting, is that in spite of Mexico has inflation and has not changed the fuel price. Fuel is not a component of a domestic component. Imported prices are, but not domestic. Bolivia has no inflation, has a very low inflation, 3% inflation, Bolivia. They keep the rate of exchange stable, and they keep fuel prices stable and food prices stable. And they have done this by producing more. And it's worked so far. Some argue they're going to run out of international reserves. Let's watch. But for the time being, inflation is under control. So more production is a way out, know that. Thank you.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and want to like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.